Welcome to the next logic video in the series. In this video, we're going to wire up the client form. So let's go right to our Visual Studio and find the client form. So let's open that up. There we go. And now we need to do a few things here. So first thing needs to happen here, and if they hit new, instead what we need to do is probably just hide these two things, is my assumption is what we're going to do, and then allow them to fill in, make sure we clear out everything here, allow them to fill in the values, but we also need to populate the defaults. Okay, so that's our job. So the first thing to do is we need to get a client list. So let's go to our code behind, and we need to get a client list, which we're actually going to store in our class itself instead of in one particular method. That way we can use it and continue to use it. Okay, so let's create first a model in our models folder, and this will be the client model. And make it public, and this will use the ID. And then we have the name, so that's a string. Next we have the hourly rate, which is a double. Next, we have the string email. Let's call it email. And then we have a number of things that are already in this model here, the defaults model. We have the pre-bill, the has cutoff, the minimum hours, the billing increment, and the roundup after X minutes. So I'm going to copy these, and I will paste them. That way, it's just less typing for me. Now, yes, we're reusing something here, but that doesn't mean we need to create a base class and then inherit from it, because they're not really the same thing. And just because they have the same properties doesn't mean they should both inherit from a parent. Okay, so don't just think, well, we can inherit client model from defaults model, because that's not really true. Okay, so let's not do that, because those are not really related. They're two different things. So I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to say, that's it right there. I'll initialize it in my constructor. So I'm actually going to create a private method for this. Private void initialize client list. Okay, and here I am going to say string SQL equals, and here's my SQL statement, select star from client. That's going to give me everything. And then I will have my clients equal to SQLite data access. I'm going to say dot load data, and we're going to pass in the client model. We're going to say SQL, and our parameters is new object, because we don't have any parameters. And that's it. So now we've initialized our list. Now, the first time we do this, it'll be empty. because we don't have any clients to start off with. So now we have our list initialized. We need to and so I'll make a method right here, private void wire up client drop down. And we're going to say client drop down dot input, sorry, not input, items dot items source equals clients. And then the client drop down dot display member path. This is the item in here. So let's go ahead. This is the property in here you want to display. So let's display name. So we'll say name is what we're going to display, and then the client, actually I paste there or copy that, right? So the value, it's the selected value path, okay? And this equals the ID property. So that's going to be, if we go here, that's going to be this property right here. And that'll be how we identify which item is selected. And if you're familiar with wiring up combo boxes in WinForms, that's pretty similar. Now, the list right here, this is standard for if we don't want our list to change. If we don't think our list is going to change, we can use a list. However, if it's going to change, then we need to use an observable collection instead. The problem with that is that it's not an easy just put it in. We'll have to convert it to an observable collection. But the observable collection, what it does, it allows us to change the list, and it changes in the dropdown. I'm not going to worry about it because we're not going to we're going to reload the entire thing if we have a change. So that's not a problem for me. Now let's go ahead and make sure it's the startup form. Again, this is just for demoing and make sure that we're trying out things as we go. But eventually this will calm down. We'll change this. But for now, we're going to start this form. Just make sure it works, make sure it loads, and make sure nothing crashes. Okay. So there's no clients currently because there's nobody in our client list. Now, that doesn't mean that this necessarily worked. We'll have to wait until we have a client and then see if it worked. So, but at least we know that it didn't crash. Okay. So now we have we've initialized our client list and we've wired up our client dropdown. Now we can move on to the next part of this, which is let's do a new first and let's wire that up, because if we wire up a new, then we can wire up the submit, and we'll create, based upon the new, we'll create a new client. And the next time we load it, we should have something in the dropdown, and then we can wire up the edit and actually see it work. So let's wire up the new button. So let's come over here on the new button, and we're going to add a click event. So let's make sure it has a name. It does. It's called new button. So therefore, when we add the click event and we hit enter, it's going to create the new button underscore click, which is right down here. So this event, what it's going to do, a couple things. First of all, it's going to hide both the client, which actually will hide the stack panel entirely. So let's give it a name. Let's say x:\name equals, and this will be the client stack panel. And we'll also hide the edit button. we'll find out which one it is. So we'll try is visible first, equals false. And then also the button, which is the edit button, is visible equals false. Let's see if that works. It's looking like no, because it cannot be assigned to only red. So therefore it's not is visible, but there was a visibility. So let's go down here and look at the visibility. And that, I believe, yes, it's both get and set. But that is a visibility property. So I'm guessing that's not going to be, notice it's visibility. So what if we said equals visibility dot, and there's collapsed, which says do not display the element and do not reserve the space for its layout. There's also hidden, which is do not display the element, but reserve the space for the element and layout. I think I want that instead. And there's also visible, which is display the element. So let's do hidden and see how that works. Okay, so say visibility and not true or false, but instead the hidden. So it's good to try these things out and learn the differences. WinForms is a whole lot easier, I think, but there you go. So there's now this way of doing things. We could also change this. Let's see what collapsed will do for us. So we'll write again, and this time we'll say new. I kind of like that a little better because what it shows now is this is a new form. So I like that. Let's go ahead and keep that. And now the next thing we need to do is we need to bring in those defaults. So since it's a new record, we need to load the defaults, which we actually have a command for right over here. Select defaults, and it loads it into our defaults model, but we actually want it to be a list. So we're going to grab this and copy it, and let's try to think we should do it right in the event. I think not. I think instead I'm going to create a private list of defaults model, which is load defaults. And actually, no, I want just one default. I'm wrong. And so we'll set this up, and I call this output instead of model. And then return output, like so. So now we have a load defaults. The next thing we need to do is we need to populate the form with the defaults. Okay, so let's create yet another method. Private void put defaults, or you know what? I'm trying to think, should we load the defaults and return them, or should we just load the defaults onto the page? I think maybe load the defaults onto the page, in which case this is a void. And this is back to model. That seemed a little more, makes a little more sense, I think. So if model is not equal to null, then what we're going to do is actually populate our values. Now this looks an awful lot like the code we already have, which it really is, because it's this code right here. And in fact, I'm going to copy and paste this because I think we copied the controls from our client page. So now we can do the reverse and populate our the same boxes. Now it has cutoff checkbox. Let's look. Cutoff client has cutoff checkbox. Why is that? Oh, that's a typo. We fixed that typo in the other form. We missed it over here. So that hopefully solved that problem. It did. So now in theory, if we just do this, we can load the defaults. Let's try it. New. hourly rate, pre-bill, here's our numbers. So we're good to go. I mean, now, the one thing that we're not real clear on is whether we're doing a new entry or whether we're editing an existing entry. I could base it upon the drop down if something's selected. The problem is if somebody selects something and goes, oh, nope, I want to add a new one, then we might accidentally update a record instead of adding a new one. So instead, on this button click, one of the things I want to do is I want to update a value up here. Let's call it a bool. Is new entry. We're going to set that to true by default. So by default, it's a new entry. And let's copy this code. And whenever we say new, we'll also set that to be a new entry. That way, if we go to edit, we'll say, no, it's not a new entry. Therefore, we can look at the drop down for which one we're editing. Okay, so now that we have this, we can when it went away, I hit Control J and it brought it back. So now it has created a new submit form for us. And now we can either insert a new record or update an existing record. So let's create a method that we're going to call private void insert new client. Because in here, we're going to say if is new entry equals true, then insert new client. It kind of reads very clearly then. We're going to have an else that says, and let's actually create the stub of that method now, private void update client record. And this is what we'll call when we don't have a new entry. And then finally, we're going to want a method for resetting the form. What this is going to do is it's going to, forgot my semicolon there. It's going to show all the things that are hidden. So reset the form, and let's just wire this one up first. So up here, we said collapsed to these two values, and we set the new entry to true. Let's go ahead and set the visibility to visible for both of these. And we'll set is new entry to true. That's just a start. And then we're also going to show one more button, and that's the new button visibility equals visibility.visible. My assumption here is we're going to hide the new button when we hit the edit button. So that resets it either way, and that should be done. So now let's work on the insert new client. So we need to create an insert record. So string SQL equals insert into client, and we'll have name, hourly rate, email, pre-bill, has cutoff, minimum hours, billing increment, round up after X minutes. And yes, I'm reading this. I'm not actually remembering this from memory. I'm looking at on another screen at my actual table. Values, let's not forget that from last time. And then don't forget, we're just going to take all of these and put an @ symbol in front of them. So let's just paste those in, and we'll put that @ symbol in front of each of them. And that is a lot of text. Now, our name here, it's SQLite Data Access. So SQLite Data Access dot save data, and we have our SQL statement, and we need our dictionary. Let's say parameters for now, but I don't have that yet. So let's go ahead and say dictionary string object parameters equals new dictionary. And let's do our curly braces here. And then we can just start adding our items. So first we have name, and the name is going to be, let's grab that off of the screen. So we have, what do we call it? The name text box. That's pretty simple. Name text box dot text. Now, the one thing this brings up before we go any further is my defaults didn't change the name or email address, and that's probably a flaw. So let's change that name. Now, name textbox.text equals empty string, and email textbox.text equals empty string. So either way, we'll update those. I could put them outside the if else and just do it once, but I'm just gonna leave it there like that. So that way, we're sure that those get cleared out either way. Okay, so we have our name, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna copy and paste this. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Let's fix the formatting there. And now we'll just populate all of our values here. And then I'll go back and fill these in. The nice thing here is by going in order like this and counting, I'm double checking that I didn't miss one. That's really easy to do. Okay, so I have all of these. Let's look at the hourly rate text box.text. The problem here is that I haven't validated my form. So that's going to be a problem because that's a text, and I actually want a number, and I want to make sure they didn't put something like test in there. So let's go over to my validate form, and we're going to copy that because it's pretty similar. All right, validate form. And the only things we're not validating are the name and email address. So we'll just put those in. We're going to assume that they give us good email address and name. Model dot, and this is defaults model. And I need instead to have the, where is it? Well, it's a client's model. The client model. There we go. So model dot name equals name text box dot text, and model dot email equals we can say var form equals validate form. And now we can say, instead of name text box, we can say form.model.name, which means I have to type that now for everything, but it's a small price to pay. So let's paste that in everywhere, and then I'll go back and put the actual values. I didn't put the dot at the end because when I hit the dot, it's going to give me my drop down. So hourly rate. The reason it doesn't yell at me here is because model is an object, just like the hourly rate is. But instead of double, it's of type client model. So technically it works in the dictionary. It wouldn't work when I go to save it to the database. Now, the one thing I didn't do was I didn't check for if form.isValid equals false. That's going to return in that case because our validation, oh no, we don't have a message yet. So we'll give a message first. So message box.show, please, invalid form. Please check your data and try again. Okay, so there we've checked our form, make sure it's valid, and we've returned if it's not valid. Therefore, it is valid down here. We can save our data. Okay, so now that's the insert, and hopefully that'll work. The way to find out is to run it. So let's make sure that we're calling it. So we have our validate form. We have our insert new client if is new entry equals true on our submit form click. So that should be everything we need. We'll find out if we didn't wire something up in just a minute. So I'll say new, and there's my defaults, and my ABC Corp is the name of the company, and bossman at abc.com. I'll hit submit, and it's now done because it showed me this. We need to clear these values out though. So let's make sure we remember to do that in just a minute. But now let's start again and notice that ABC Corp is in the list. Now it also didn't update the list, update the dropdown. So let's make sure that happens as well. So let's first grab all these fields. Now this is kind of like the reset. In fact, we can actually even call this private void reset form, like so, and then we can call it right here. That way we can also call it, oops. I already have a reset form. Okay, let's undo that. And let's actually, you know what? Let's call this the clear form data. There we go. That's a little more clear. So now down here, we also need to make sure that we're updating that list. So let's go ahead and call the wire up client dropdown. Now I don't know if we need to set that list to null or not. In WinForms, when we have the item source set to the same list we already had it set to, it doesn't change anything. We need to set it to null first. I'm not sure if we have to do that here or not. So we're going to try it without setting it to null. So we're going to say, we already have ABC Corp. We're going to say new. We're going to say the way you want it to. So now let's set the client dropdown dot item source equal to null first. And then we'll reset back to clients and see if that works. Okay, so first we check to make sure that both are in here. And then we'll say XYZ Inc. And the email address is bob@xyz.net. Oops, we're saying new. There we go. XYZ Inc. and bob@xyz.net. And the hourly rate, man, we really stick it to these guys, is $500 an hour. Minimum number of hours is 3, and billing increments is 2. So we really want to make sure that we charge them highly. We hit submit. Everything's cleared back out and set to defaults. We still don't have something in that dropdown. All right, so instead of fighting with this, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to change this list to be observable collection. Which I have to hit control dot and add a using statement for system.collections.object model. Now that works, but it's going to break this load right here because this is a list. So what I'm going to do is say, instead of clients, I'm going to say var client list equals, and then what I'll do is I'm going to say client list dot for each x. I'm going to say clients dot add, and then I'm going to say x. Okay, so what this does is it takes every item in the client list and adds it to the clients, which is an observable collection. So now it should observable collection. There we go. Now we hit start. In theory, this works. We have our 3 items. Let's add a new one. So we'll say new. And then, we might need to hide all this until they hit new or edit. That makes a lot more sense, I think, because right now I'm tempted to put something in before I hit new, and then it wipes it out. So that's just something to think through. Maybe we'll add that change. Okay. Let's call it Tim. Let's call it I am Tim Corey. There we go. Tim at iamtimcorey.com. Hourly rate, that sounds fine. I'll leave it all as defaults and hit submit. And it's still not there. So let's find out why. I think I have an idea. we don't have here, which is interesting. So maybe either pass it in when we validate. Nope, we got it. I'm sorry. Form dot. So we go to load our list, order by, let's order by name. Let's make sure that works. And it does not. Excellent. That's because I ordered the defaults by name, which does nothing for us. I need to come up here to client. It's, let's see, the name is going to be, I don't know, Sue, Sue's Emporium. And Sue at emp.net. She's got a nice domain. We'll be nice to Sue. We'll charge her $175. Hit submit. And now Sue's Emporium is there. It's not ordered. And we might want to think about if we want to order that or not, but at least it's in the list. And I think that's fine. I don't think we have to order it because we know that the new one's at the bottom. It just shows us it is in the list. So now let's go ahead and address this whole not showing this until I hit new or edit. So let's look at naming all of these items. So every stack panel after the first one is the client. After that, we need to give names to all of these. So let's just call them, well, we should call them what they are. Name stack panel, let's copy and paste this and say email. And then say hourly rate. This is actually two. We'll call it checkboxes. And this one as well is 2. And this is, how are we going to define this one? Let's just call this increments. And the submit button, we're also going to, oops, we don't need guest. It'd be nice if we could wrap the whole thing and say this section, but we didn't set it up that way. I don't want to rework all my XAML in order to do that. So let's just go through. We'll start with the name stack panel. We'll create a method. We got a lot of methods here. Notice all the list. What we can do to make this a little easier to read is right click and say outlining, collapse the definitions. And there's our definitions now. And since they're named well, it should be kind of clear what's going on. So you can also see you're missing a space here. So I went ahead and put that space in. Okay, so now let's create a private void toggle form fields display. Bool display fields. Okay, so what it's going to do is either hide them or show them. That way we can do both in one method. All right, so what we'll do is we're going to create a simple if statement that populates a variable. So let's start with, remember that we have the is visible. So let's say name stack panel, visibility equals visibility dot, and we said it was, there was collapsed, hidden, and visible. So we said collapsed. So let's create a visibility variable. Let's call it display equals, and we'll say display fields, and we'll do our question mark, and then if it's true, come back over here and get all of our stack panels, set the visibility to display. And in fact, let's just do a copy and paste a number of times, and then we can just paste in the stack panel name. And the one that's not a stack panel is the submit form button. Toggle it to be false. That's the default starter value. When we reset the form, we'll also set it to false. Okay, so it's not going to show us fields until we go to display a new, or when we go to edit a record. So load defaults and then toggle display to be true so that it actually shows. Let's see how this works. So by default, nothing is showing. We hit new, and all of a sudden now we can make our modifications. All right, so now all we need to do is wire up the other button, which is the edit button. Okay, so let's go back over. Edit that. So let's actually move this. I'm gonna move this up. So I Control X and move it up right below our add or new button click. Just because I'm going to kind of mimic what this does. So I'm going to set the client stack panel visibility to collapsed and the new button visibility to collapsed. And this is not a new entry. And therefore I need to load, not the defaults, but I need to load client. Okay. And then I'm going to toggle the display to show my fields. Okay. So let's create the load clients method. Private void load clients. And so the first thing I need to do is figure out what the SQL statement is. So a SQL statement is going to be, actually, I don't think we need a SQL statement because we have this list of clients already. So what we can do is we can say, let's grab it's a client model. And this will be the client equals, and let's grab the, what's the dropdown called? It's probably called client dropdown. So client dropdown dot selected item. Okay. Now it's going to yell at us because that's an object, but we can cast it to a client model. Before that, though, we're going to say messagebox.show you please select a client first. Okay, just in case they don't select something. And that return exits us out so that, and actually, you know what? We should probably put this check way up. Because if they don't select something, we shouldn't hide the dropdown. So let's put that there. And we'll say that if they get this far, then yes, there is a client selected. Okay, so now we have something selected. We can load our form, which that should be a lot like load the defaults. So this right here is how we're going to do this. So this works for loading. It's just going to be, instead of model, it's client. The only thing we're missing is the name and email. So client.name and client.email. And now I've loaded the client. That's really it. I don't see anything else we need to do, so let's just run this and make sure it works. So we're going to hit edit right now with nothing selected. And it says, please select a client first. Okay, I am Tim Corey, edit, and there we go. So now I've loaded I am Tim Corey with all the values. Now we don't have a cancel here. We might want to think about that to kind of reset things. So in fact, let's go ahead and next to the submit button, let's actually add a cancel. So I am going to cut this out and say stack panel orientation equals horizontal. And I'm also going to give it a name of button stack panel, because don't forget we have to hide this. And then I'll paste in my one button and paste in a second button. I'm going to call this clear. And we'll say this is clear form. And I'm going to cut out all of this right here and paste it up here. And so now we can cut out this as well. And so now we have two buttons. Oops, let's make sure that's capital C. Oops, not control C, capital C. There we go. But it's kind of ugly. So let's go ahead and do a couple things. We can, here, let's put a second line here and say that the horizontal alignment is center. So it puts those two buttons in the center. And let's make sure those buttons are spaced apart. So let's say that the margin equals left is 0, top is 0, right is 10, and left is 0. And we'll do the same exact thing, but only in reverse for this one. So instead of this, it's going to be left is 10 and right is 0. And maybe we should change it to 5. But that way they're equally away from the center. Okay. Now clear is a little small, and actually so is submit. So let's change the padding to be left and right. Let's put 3 and then 0. See how that looks. Let's do 5. All right. And then we'll do the same thing for clear. And I must have, yep, there we go. I accidentally copied the N as well. So that gives a little bit better buttons. Yeah, it's not great, but it's not bad. Instead of that button, we need to have the button stack panel visibility changed. But again, it's one change. So there we go. And now if I say I want to edit, let's edit Sue's Emporium. Okay, and I say, you know what? Clear that out. Now I can edit somebody else, or I can hit new and fill that in. So that's kind of nice. So we have that in place. Now let's just wire up the save record, the update client record, which right now is empty. I really should have thrown a not implemented exception. That way I could see that it's not working, but I didn't. That's kind of my bad. Because what happens is, since it's collapsed, I wouldn't necessarily know there's no code in here, and I could, actually hit the submit and think it's saving unless I checked it. So that's just something to think through. I'm going to open up the insert as well. I probably will use this. So let's grab all of this for the parameters. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to say string SQL equals, that'll be my SQL statement, and then my my dictionary will take in, we need to validate first. So let's validate the form. There we go. And now it's all valid. The one thing we're going to need to add, though, let's add this right here, is ID. And instead of from the form, what we're going to do is we're going to say that's whatever is selected in the drop down. So we have the that drop down. Where is it? There we go, right here. So we can wrap this whole thing in parens. Watch this. Wrap it in parens, paste it in here, and now we can say dot ID. The other thing we could do is, since and this is going to be easier, is instead of doing all this casting, we can say client dropdown dot selected value, because the selected value is something that we mapped out. And let's just make sure we cast that to an int, even though it accepts it. That's something we selected earlier and said, when we mapped it out, we said the ID will be the selected value path. So now that should be all we tell the user that that we're done. Nope, we don't. Interesting. Okay, so we'll need to do that at some point. I believe maybe it's in here. Interesting. I thought we were telling the user. Let's look for message boxes. All right, not in selection. I want this in the current document. Please select the client first, invalid form. That's it. So we're not telling the user that we've done anything. So what we need to do is we need to say, once we've saved data, we need to let the user know. Just say success for now. And then we'll do the same thing when we update. Just to show that something has happened. Yes, we clear things out. We want to make sure that they know that it was successful. Message box is not the greatest way of doing that, but it's a quick way of doing it. So we're going to call that good. So the last thing we need to do is we need to write our SQL statement. So we're going to say update, and this is client. And then we'll say set name equals at name. Hourly rate equals at hourly rate. Email equals at email. Pre-bill equals at pre-bill. Has cut off equals at has cut off. And let's just wrap this thing. Whoops. There we go. So we make sure we have the comma at the end. We do not. Let's put that comma at the end. Otherwise, we'll miss it. So after has cut off, let's make sure that's the last one. Yep, has cut off. So now we can say cut off equals at cut off. Minimum hours equals at minimum hours. All right. Billing increment equals at billing increment. And round up after X minutes equals, I'm going to copy and paste this one, at, and there we go. I'm actually going to put another return here and say where ID equals at ID. So that's going to update our record and set all these values based upon the IDs matching. So if you don't have the ID, it wouldn't work to update. You definitely don't want to forget this line, because if you do, then you're going to update every record with these values, and that'd be a problem. So I think we're all set here. Let's find out. So I'm going to, well, first of all, edit, and it says, nope, choose one first. Let's edit I am Tim Corey and say, you know what? I want to add, it's really simple, .com. Submit, success. And so now if I edit this again, it didn't update that record, which is interesting because it is updated. If I go here to I am Tim Corey, it says .com. Okay. It's just that it didn't update the list. So what we need to do is we probably need to update that model. Now we could do that in a couple different ways. One, we could remove that model from the list and add a new one, which that seems like it's probably the easiest thing to do. Or two, we could update the model in place where we say all these properties, line up. It's really up to us. If we edit in place, then it doesn't change the dropdown and it allows us to keep it in the right order. So I think let's just do that. So as long as we have success down here, then we're going to update the dropdown. And this is going to be a bit interesting. So we need to grab the format selected, which we did that, like I said, up here. Let's grab, I like copying and pasting much better than the idea of say current record dot name equals form dot model dot name. I'm going to copy and paste this. In fact, let's copy it with a carriage return. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now I can just copy and paste the parameter names . What I probably could have done is just said the current record equals, but that might have caused a problem. This way it's clear and it works. We'll think about if we need to try out the other way. So that's one way of doing it. Now that I think of it, if we can do the current record equals form.model, then that'd be cool. Let's try it out. So let's just do current record equals form.model. Let's see if that works. We're putting this instance into that instance. Let's run it. See what happens. What's the worst that can happen? I am timcorey.com. Nope, I don't want the .com. And I hit submit, success. And when I hit edit again, it's still there. So that didn't work. Let's try the other way. So I'm going to comment this out. And I'm going to grab all these and uncomment those. And let's see if this works. So I am Tim Corey is now appropriate. Let's change the hourly rate to $3.75 and submit. And if we hit edit, it's now $3.75. So that way worked. It's a little bit brute force, but it does work. So we'll call that good. We could probably, maybe if we put it into the client dropdown .selected item, or we probably have to look it up in the observable collection and find it there and kill it. I'm curious, okay? I don't like this way because if we add a new property, we have to add it here too. So let's just see if we say client dropdown .selected item, because the reason this didn't work, it kind of makes sense. We cast this into a new record. So we actually, it should have been the same instance, but just in case it's not, form.model. The other problem is form.model does not have an ID. So that's something we need to change. So we'll grab that from a selected value. There we go. We put that value in. Let's just try it again, see if we can get this to go. Last chance. If we don't, we'll leave it as it is. 425, submit, success, edit, 375 still. So that does not work. Okay. Now we have both edit and new. We can edit a record. We can clear it back out. We can say, nope, give me a new one. We can clear that back out. We can choose a different one. It loads it up. If we make a change, then we say ABC Co. We hit submit, success, and now if we edit this, it's ABC Co. Now it didn't, let's say clear. It didn't update the client dropdown for the name. I think that's because it populated that name once. So that'd be something it's kind of a bummer, but not something I'm going to worry about. But now that means that this form, the client control form, is done. We wrote a lot of code here, but I think we did a great job of keeping things kind of in their own little model or own little method so that it's really clear what's going on in each of these. So clear form data, insert new client, reset the form, and all the rest. So since that's so clear, I think that even though we have a lot of code, it's pretty good. Now, eventually I might like to come back here and refactor this a little bit, maybe pull things out into a class, maybe. But the reality is these are all very specific to this form, and they're pretty self-contained. So I'm not sure I want to change a whole lot. That, I think, comes with a little bit of time and a little bit of perspective. So when I come back to this later, I might see things that I don't right now. So I'm going to leave it as is because it works. And that's the very first and most important thing. It works. So that means I can ship this and be comfortable with it working. So I'm going to leave it right as it is. Now, for you, I want you to make sure you go through and create this form. Try and do it all yourself instead of just copying and pasting my code. Because if you copy and paste my code, you don't get the experience of actually typing it. So go through and create this, try things out, play around with things, make sure you understand why things are doing the things they are, okay? And then once you've done that, move on to the next lesson.